that I introduce Professor Andrea Pieroni. It's not easy to summarize his significant experience in academia as a researcher and a lecturer, but I will try. He's a full professor of environmental and applied botany, ethnobotany, and ethnobiology at the University of Gastronomic Sciences in Milan. He served as vice president and president. Sorry, noise. Of ethnobiology, and is the founder and chief editor of the Journal of Ethnobiology and Ethnomedicine, and sits on the editorial board of several international scientific journals. He also served as rector of the University of Gastronomic Sciences. Professor Pieroni's research work focuses on temporal and spatial dynamics of folk wild plant knowledge and attached food heritage. In his research, the main targeted communities and study areas are minorities, diasporas, cultural and geographical boundaries in the Mediterranean, the Balkans, and especially in the Middle East. He studied the use and management of wild plants, plant food heritage and its dynamics, neglected ingredients, foraging for wild plants, home food preparation perceived as healthy, food medicines, and traditional fermented foods. All these topics are of great interest for the valorization of mountain territories, rich in plant resources suitable for these purposes. I'm sure I missed a lot of other things in my short description. So I now give the floor to Professor Pieroni to hear directly from his voice about novelties regarding his research activities, especially on mountain ethnobotany. Thank you very much, Andrea, for your availability in conducting this seminar for our students and the UNIMONT network members following us today. It's up to you now.
Thanks a lot, Anna. It's a huge pleasure to be here today, and I'm very curious to get your insight and suggestions and comments. So I would like very much this could turn into a dialogue, especially at the end of my presentation. So may I share maybe the screen, right? Okay. Do you see the screen?
It's arriving. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Perfect. So indeed, the mountain environments are very special, as you know better than me. I will try to make the points of how local knowledge can be important for the future of the sustainability of the mountain systems. Basically, the concept here at the core of the story is the local knowledge. What is the local knowledge? The local knowledge is a mixture of knowledge as we intend it in science, of practices, of believing systems, which emerge in certain endroits, in certain environments, as the result of a co-evolution between local communities in those environments. This local knowledge is different from the scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge is standardized, is written, while local knowledge is mainly oral. The two main thinkers of these issues have been Daryl Posey and Nina Etkin. Daryl Posey was used to say that there is an inextricable link between culture and nature in every community of the world. And Nina Etkin has advocated this local knowledge for becoming the center for further fostering germane science, for further fostering what we would maybe today call citizen science. Actually, this local knowledge has been defined in the 90s by ecologists and has been defined at that time as traditional environmental knowledge. Is basically handed uh, through generations by the cultural transmission and is about the relationships of living beings with one another and their environment. So it's the knowledge about gathering plants in the mountains, managing a home gardens in the mountains, if we take the mountains as our privileged Andrea, is about the management of the forest resources, is about traditional architecture, is about traditional food systems, traditional products of the mountains, is about all these relations between humans and nature. And if we see in the last years, we have got an incredible increase of papers regarding traditional environmental knowledge. 5 decades ago, there were just very sporadic papers. Nowadays, we run at the moment around 1,000 papers per year. This issue became in the years in the past very important for all these courses related to environmental management and sustainable use of local resources, especially in fragile environments like the mountains are. So I will try to address a theses which are the distillate of my 30 years experience in the field and especially in the mountains, different kind of mountains in Eurasia. And in this, I will try to make clear why this knowledge is, in my humble opinion, so important for the future of the mountains. First of all, traditional environmental knowledge, this local knowledge, is the result of a coevolution, clearly. We cannot find the same kind of practices in different environments normally, or even in the same environments, but managed by different cultural groups. So these knowledge and practices are the specific results of situated relationships between nature and humans. These systems are nowadays part of the cultural heritage. This is something that it wasn't that clear 20 years ago. In 2003, the UNESCO adopted the Convention on Intangible Cultural Heritage, which has been in the meantime ratified by most of the countries in the world. And in this convention is clearly written that intangible cultural heritage is also about knowledge and practices concerning nature. So cultural heritage is not just about a beautiful Chinese ceramic product or a church, a monument, an archaeological site, but is about these unique relationships, nature, humans. This kind of knowledge, which I repeat, is strongly embedded into practice and believing systems, can be particularly resilient in certain spots, is not ubiquitous. The Stockholm School has addressed the concept of biocultural refugia, plural, refugia, meaning spots in which these relationships are particularly dense. And most of the time, these refugia are in mountainous areas, not for the fact that mountain have been historically isolated. This is the common refrain we always heard. But mountains have been most of the time in the history bridges among cultures and actually ecological margins and cultural margins, meaning along the mountains, in the mountain environments, we have often a huge richness of cultural diversity and therefore of traditional environmental knowledge. Now, within the same natural environment, this knowledge can be very different among diverse cultural communities. As I said, being the interaction between a specific natural environment and the humans living around these environments, when the culture is complex, is polycentric, we have also a polycentric local knowledge. The typical example is if we go in areas of the mountains in Südtirol or in Friuli, where we have different linguistic groups, we have a very different ways of managing, using, perceiving the same natural resources. But we can find examples of all these all over the world, in the Western Alps, with the Occitan culture, Franco-Provençal, Piemontese, Ligurian, in the Caucasus, most notably, which is the mountain area in the world which is more diverse in terms of linguistics. And here we see study that we published a couple of years ago in Nature Plants, that actually the management and the use of wild plants can be very different. In this case, are two groups living in the Korab mountain, you know, the mountain between North Macedonia, Albania, and Kosovo. These two groups have been living together for 300 years, roughly, sharing the same religion, but they use very idiosyncratic plants. And this shows the importance of this cultural element. These two groups in the specific case are Albanians living in the Korab villages and Gorani. Gorani are Slavic Muslims who live also in these villages. This knowledge is not only important because it's about the management, the use, and the perception of nature, but it's important because it is underpinned in cognitive structures. That means it's very much influenced by language and is very much embedded also in the landscape. Specific ways of managing the landscape are the result of specific cognitive categories, not only, but also the result of specific cognitive categories. And if you see the starting point of all this discussion, 1992, the conference of Rio, you were possibly not yet born. But the idea was that scientists and local communities, mainly mountainous local communities, were able to draft a parallel between the loss of cultural diversity and the loss of biological diversity. And this has been a little bit the starting point of this alliance between environmentalists and indigenous and local communities for saving this biocultural heritage. Of course, if we lose biological diversity, we use also cultural diversity, because if we do not have anymore a plant available or another natural object or system available, we cannot manage it. But also the contrary is true. If we lose cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, sometimes we lose the specific concepts of managing the environment, and therefore these may have an effect on biological diversity. There is not only in this seminal article published in PNAS in 2012, but also in a very recent one published on Science last year, the fascinating hypothesis that actually the hotspot for biodiversity are linked to the hotspot for cultural and linguistic diversities. And if you see, most of these hotspots are related also to mountains, most notably in the Papua New Guinea, in the Caucasus, as we said, and in around the Kilimanjaro. This is an example of how a little mountain community in southern Italy classify plants. This community is made upon arbresh. Arbresh are those Albanians who escaped Albania 5 centuries ago because they didn't want to be Islamicized and moved to southern Italy. This picture shows that this community classify plants not only according to morphological features, which would be somehow normal in biology, but also according to functional features. That means plants are classified according to their edibility, for example, and the people distinguish between the group Para and Liacra. If we go more in detail and we see the mental map in this village people use for classifying wild vegetables, that means vegetables collected in the wilderness, we can see that there are very specific patterns, which not necessarily are related to taxonomic closeness of the plants, but are mainly related to the ecological spaces in which plants are gathered. So these mental maps are strongly embedded into the ecology. And even more, sometimes they are strongly related to the taste, because these are wild vegetables, they need to be eaten. So plants having similar taste, they are grouped in the same kind of cluster, sometimes even named with the same folk name. Although the plants are botanically different and even sometimes belonging to different families. So this idea of this mental map, which are actually talking about the daily ecologies people live, is quintessential for understanding how these complex local knowledge systems work. They do not work like biological systems, but they are very complex and they are very much embedded into the landscape, into the natural environment. That's why they are treasures, and they are unique treasures in every community. These traditional and local knowledge also concern, of course, religious and symbolic components. This is something we very often in biology underestimate, but the ways plants are represented in folk tales, the way rituals are arranged, as for example, around the table, are very much part of this conglomerate. Let's think at the way of traditional consumption of certain dishes in the mountains for religious festivities. And most of these dishes sometimes are based upon local ingredients. Actually, you see here also an example of how, for example, the management of sorghum in the high plateau of Ethiopia is actually influenced by the transmission of folk songs. This knowledge is normally vertically transmitted, as we have learned, let's say, in an intuitive way, we know that our grannies have taught something and we take the teachings of our grannies. So this is a vertical transmission of these practices. But some of these practices are transmitted horizontally, peer to peer. This is, for example, the case of plants, and not only plants-based practices managed by kids. In the mountains, it's very normal, especially in shepherding communities, to grab wild plants and to eat them on spot. These are not officially foods because they do not come into the domestic arena. But this kind of wild snacking is normally transmitted peer to peer. It's very interesting nutritionally and is very important because very prone to innovation. Normally, one kid learns from another kid and forget these practices when the kid enter into the adulthood. Traditional knowledge systems are also encapsulated in memory carriers, and therefore there are social institutions which are embedded into these knowledge systems. One thing we very often forget when we look at natural resources is the problem in human ecology is a huge problem of the access to these resources. Most of these resources are common goods, as we call them nowadays. But in the mountains, especially in the mountains, in fragile environments of this kind, natural resources access has been regulated by very sophisticated customary laws. The most notable example in Italy is usi civici. And this is a truly example of a communal form of using together resources. These are also part of this conglomerate of local knowledge systems. And there is a huge discussion nowadays how to make this communal management vibrant again, because we ended up to understand that whether sometimes the private nor the state-based management of mountain resources are the best options. These knowledge systems needs to be documented with, I would say, an obsessed rigor, because they are truly complex, they are disappearing, and they are very precious. If they disappear forever. They cannot be reactivated. That's why it's so important to document these knowledge systems in a very, very scientific way, speaking, talking, observing locals, involving locals in research, according to the new idea also of citizen science. For example, in the plant food scouting, when we address the issue of the management and use of wild plant resources, we need to understand the local names, we need to understand which are the management practices, we need to document not only the plants, but the narratives of the peoples. This is what normally ethnobiology does. But still, there are very new arenas which are unexplored. For example, it's just in the last year literature that we have works addressing the issue of how mountains communities perceive local changes, global changes, climate changes, and adapt to them, because they already adapt. The methodological keyword of this methodology is let's say, being in the field is the endemic approach, meaning the approach from the perspective of the locals, not the approach of the Giorgist, which is enetic. Very important is also my 10th thesis. These local knowledge systems are very important for improving food sovereignty. That means the right of local community, of all local communities, to design, manage, realize the food system that makes sense to them. Very important this debate when we talk about local foods, specialty food, the importance of gastronomy for keeping the identity of the mountain communities. Why food sovereignty should be interested in local knowledge? Because local knowledge has fostered the endogenous capabilities of the peoples to make sense of their environment for centuries. An important point is also that this local knowledge is resilience, because these local knowledge systems are the results of many crises, different crises from the terrible ones we have nowadays, but they are the results of crisis, and therefore they have in themselves the germ, the seeds for and enhancing the resilience of the system. This is a very important element. This local knowledge is not something that was developed externally and adopted by the communities in the past years, but is the result of this continuous adaptation to crisis. This is an example, however, of how local knowledge, and we are here in the mountains of Bosnia and Albania, is actually problematic. These are tubercles of wild orchids. They are very beloved in the Ottoman cuisine, as you may know, because if you dry these tubercles, you obtain a powder which has an incredible smell of vanilla, tobacco, and is used for making decoction in milk and also in the Ottoman Empire and nowadays in the cities of Turkey for making ice cream. This practice was sustainable until the recent past, but with the fall of the communism, the people understood this was a very lucrative activity. 1 kilo, 120 euros on the black market, and unsustainable gathering started to be a reality in the last 30 years in these mountains. Now, is this practice, is this local knowledge unsustainable in itself or became unsustainable because of the pressure of the market? These local knowledge systems are therefore the results of many things. There are the environments, their evolutions, and their horrible also changes due to man-made activities, most notably climate change. But they are also about cultural perceptions and social change. In the Balkans, one of the main drivers of change in the mountains is the fact that, as it happens in southern Italy, the mountain environments are abandoned. This does not happen everywhere in the world. A specific problem in a few mountainous areas in Europe, most notably Southern Italy, Eastern Europe. Also, the Carpathians are in a very similar situations. The local knowledge, therefore, is prone to receive influences by all these different variables. However, as the experience of slow food, presidia, but not only, the experience of many local producers in the mountains have shown in the past decades, these local knowledge systems can generate small-scale circular economy, because nowadays the customers are very, very sensitive to the issue of brand territorialization, meaning they want to buy not just products, but stories, narratives. And therefore, local knowledge is full of narratives, is full of stories, is full of dense interactions of the peoples with their environments. Last but not least, citizen science. The horizon for science 2030, at least in Europe, is to create inclusive platforms with local communities. And local knowledge systems can represent the core of many projects in which local communities can find again their dignity, identity, and they can co-create research and scholarly outcomes. Science had to be related to humans since it was born. Was a duty of the science to be useful for the humanity. But here we are a step ahead. Science has to be completely embedded into academia, has to be completely embedded into the community. That means the local communities can co-create science together with the scientists. And I think the mountain communities, for their experience of managing the cultural life in a communal way, they are the main hope for this epistemological change. Ignacio Ellacuría was the rector of the University of Salvador. It was killed more than 30 years ago, but was used to say something very important, reminding a little bit also Don Milani and the mountain, let's say, story of his kids in the Apennines of Tuscany. Science is needed to provide voice for those without voices. And we know that this is most of the problem we have for mountain communities nowadays, for the simple reasons that in the mountains there are not many voters. And that's why is important this alliance between university professionals, as you are, and local communities. The voice of the mountain peoples is still everywhere neglected, all over the world, very neglected. And we need this alliance for the good sake, not only of the mountain communities, but for keeping the science on the ground, humble, and in the beautiful attitude of listening to. Just a few humble suggestions for those of you interested in local knowledge. We have to relearn altogether. We are never professionals in that, to listen to our elderly, to act in a rigorous way, but smiling, never forgetting we are privileged, and sharing, because sharing is the keyword of the future. David Graeber, professor of the London School of Economics, passed away unexpectedly 4 years ago in Venice, was used to say that sharing is important because it's not about morality, it's about pleasure. For the simple reason that we do together, and mountain communities are teaching these every day, are shared, and they are the things that we like. More than open to your comments, to your challenging questions, and more than open also to listen to very different opinions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Very interesting. There are a lot of things put on the table to be discussed together and to be considered together. So please, we now open the questions and answers session. So who has questions to share with all the group, because we are speaking about sharing. I can't believe it's only a question of breaking the ice. No one. Comments. We can open the session, this session with some comments if there are no questions.
Let's break the ice. I know that you have a lot of interesting things to say.
I'm sure.
Let's break the ice.
My comment, I try to break the ice. Due to your experience, which is the part of the world where we have lost the information and the main information regarding the richness in plants we can use, also in the bioeconomy dimension field for new application, because this is another very interesting point, because we mentioned, and you mentioned the past, but we have to work in order to go on and to discover new things useful to, for example, develop new products, useful products, healthy products. This is something we are trying to do here in UNIMONT with our students, for example, studying the specific characteristic of raw material coming from mountain resources in order to apply this raw material in producing new products. And due to your experience, how much have we lost forever, and in which part of the world we can find informations and plants, new plants, for example, new species, or unknown or not very well known species to be used?
Thanks a lot for these questions. First of all, we all think that very isolated places are better for preserving local knowledge than less isolated places. This is unluckily untrue, because the local knowledge depends very much upon the pride and the sense of cultural identity the communities may still fully have or may still partially have. There are many processes in the world diluting this pride. Globalization, industrialization, but also the process of conforming practices to the mainstream of standardized knowledge. This happens very often in dictatorships, for example, most notably in the former Soviet Union. So the idea here is to preserve the dignity of the local communities. When local communities preserve their dignity, they are more prone also to innovate, to take the best of the past and bring this into the future. Unluckily, we could imagine that the most isolated place in Europe, there may be a few areas of Transcarpathia or the Albanian Alps, are the reservoir #1 of local knowledge. It's not true. So we have actually a lot of local knowledge in Italy because for whatever reason, since 20 years, the mountain people have been strong in addressing their cultural identity much more than in other areas of the world. So we do not need to go to very remote place. We can try to bring this local knowledge into the future if the communities are alive and if they are full of young vibes like you all demonstrate, I think.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. It's something sounding very interesting for us because our mission, as you know very well, is to stay within the mountains and interact with locals in order to promote together with locals, understanding the real necessities, the real priorities of people living in mountains, to promote together valorization and sustainable development of this area that were and are abandoned. And for a lot of years, they tried to adopt the same development model put in place in big cities and so on, and it's not the solution. And now it's clear that it's not the solution to transfer the same development model built up in the big cities in mountain areas. And we have to try to find the right way and the way coherent with the special vocations of the territories in order to really promote sustainable development. I see Luca Giupponi, please. Luca, if you can switch on, okay, your video. Okay, perfect. Please, it's up to you.
Okay. Hi, Andrea. Thank you for your presentation. I am Luca. I am a researcher of the University of Milan, and I am involved in the study of agrobiodiversity, plant agrobiodiversity. And I have only one question for you. What do you think about the laws, the legislation to protect Italian or European legislation to protect and promote plants of agricultural and food interest, traditionally grown, cultivated in a specific territory? Are they adequate or not? What do you think about the legislation?
I think honestly, I may be wrong because I'm not a super expert, but what I have seen in many parts of the Eurasian mountains is that the best legislation is a legislation which does not cut the hand of local peoples. The best legislation has to be soft in order to keep the room of maneuver of local communities to adapt the legislation to their needs. Instead, I have seen that when the legislation becomes very invasive, it's extremely difficult for local peoples to cope, because normally legislation tailored to local mountain communities is tailored for, let's say, medium and big enterprises. And this is the problem. But this is a cultural problem, because those addressing legislation are often not aware of the specificity of the problems in the mountain communities. And this is not in Italy, all over in Europe. You can see ministries, they know pretty well the problems of the mountains, no matter if ministries of the environment or food, of agriculture, they are very few. Just to my mind, I remember Dacian Cioloș, the former commissioner of agriculture, the Romanian agronomist, who has been a super expert of family farming. But this was an exception. Normally, many of the things coming from the political arena are really embarrassing, because there is no knowledge of the real problems on the ground. And this is a big problem, and that's why we are here. We need to build an alliance, and we need to change. Of course, there are gorgeous exceptions, very little exceptions in every countries maybe, but we need to change the general.
Okay, Andrea, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments?
Hi, can I speak?
Yes, if you can switch. Okay, perfect. We can see you.
Hi, my name is Stella. I've just ended my PhD. I'm a veterinarian, and I have done a PhD on physiological approach to the study of local goat breeds of Northern Italy. I just want to give my point of view of the same situation, because I didn't work with plants, but I speak with a lot of breeders of local goat breeds, and I found actually the same situation described by Professor Andrea. And I think that in my idea, one of the problems is that the breeders that are the owner of this cultural heritage, the livestock biodiversity, sometimes doesn't know the real value of what they breed, the value of the genetic reservoir of their goat. And from the other side, also the society, I'm speaking about little local mountains communities. The society many times is represented by, for example, where I studied, people of Milano that comes to the mountains. They don't understand the work that there is behind keeping all this cultural heritage, and they found the contrast with breeders. And so I think that maybe the scientific community should work both on the breeders to give them more value for their products, and also on the society to make the society understand the value that is preserved by these breeders.
Impressive what you said, and it's exactly like that. We need to all come together and convince, not us. We share these values, but those in Milano, in Roma, the colleagues in universities, most of them, they work behind their desk, and they've never been one day of their life on the ground to speak every day with the farmers, with the shepherds, with the actors of the mountains. This is the problem we have, but actually it's not only the problem of the mountains, it's the problem of every community in the world. We are in this strange situation. We belong to the tribe of the academicians and students who historically have destroyed the dignity of the mountains people. And now we are those who want to change that because we are fully convinced. But still, there is a lot of people in our tribe, they are not still convinced. How can we convince the peoples about the problems on the ground? Bringing back the idea that the real university is being in the field also, not only studying books, but being in the fields, bringing the idea back that we have to smile, because the world can be convinced not with anger, but smiling, because in our deep south, we have the smile of the peoples of the mountains. We have the untold. We cannot change the world, and especially increase the sensitivity of our colleagues if we are all the time angry. We need to bring the good vibes, to bring the people into the mountains, to let them stay there, to be touched by the soul of the mountains and its inhabitants.
Yes, Andrea, I completely agree with you. And we are living here in UNIMONT this experience, because we are growing, and a growing number of young students, young people are coming here. They are choosing to live, for example, big cities, Milan and so on, to live in a small village surrounded by mountains and interacting with a lot of elder people, because here there are a lot of elder people, learning new things and so on. So maybe something is changing, even if from my direct experience, there are a lot of resistances coming from our cultural vision of of the future. For example, I had some exchange with some colleagues, and they told me that our mission is destined to failure, because no one wants to come here, but the evidence is telling something really different. So maybe we are in a turning point situation, and we have to communicate very clearly to the society that there are some alternatives now, that is possible due to technology, to the possibility of sharing, also staying in different states. You are in Morocco, we are in Edolo, and we are connected with people that for sure are in different places in Italy or abroad. And so now it's possible what was not possible some years ago, when mountains were defined marginal area, and so for sure the valorization of traditional and local knowledge is one of the possibility to give a different future to these areas. So, are there any other comment, question? If not, we can close. We can thanks, of course. Okay.
Excuse me, sorry.
Can we?
Yes. Can you see me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Hi.
Your smile.
I'm sorry, I could not attend the class since the beginning, so I'm not sure. Maybe you already talked about this stuff that I'm gonna ask. First, I'm going to say thank you to Andrea, and I'm Eleonora. I'm an herbalist here in Bergamo Mountains. And since a few years, I'm trying to make some classes for people around who are interested in this subject that you have been talking about today. But what I actually found out in these years is that it's really hard to find and to get in touch with people who want to give you their knowledge, as you were saying before. And I was asking myself, if by any chance there is a sort of portal where researchers like you published some contacts of the people who would like to share it personally, because it's really hard to find people who actually preserve this knowledge and want to share it. So I was asking myself if maybe there is any portal accessible to people like me, to professionists or people who is interested in this and could get in touch with these local people who wants to share directly. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eleonora. Very good question. No, there is not a portal. There are some initiatives of NGOs, most notably, for example, the Slow Food Arc of Taste. They do publish the small-scale producers of certain things. But in scientific articles, we cannot put, for privacy reasons, the address of and the telephone number of the peoples. But I would suggest to not lose the good vibe, because clearly the local peoples are sometimes closed. They have received basically only horrible feedbacks for all their lives, basically with the exception of the last 10 years, as the Professor Anna correctly said. And that's why we have, first of all, to be extremely patient. But when whoever living in the mountains and has still knowledge, understanding the heart, your genuine heart, I'm sure he or she will be very open. So we need a long, long lasting work together with the people and never lose the good vibes, because it's difficult. Surely it's difficult. Most of the knowledge is lost. The ones they have the knowledge, they feel afraid, they are shy, they feel, why are these people coming from, let's say, from the nearby village so interested in my knowledge? But this is daily bread for everyone working with local communities, and we have to go through for the sake that we want to give back the dignity to this knowledge and to these people. So we are humbly facilitating this process. We are not the knowledgeable person. We are the listeners.
Yes, I appreciate also this
Thank you.
this kind of approach. That is not so common at the academia level. Please, Andrea, we have to admit it, because and I think it's who knows, really knows, and have knowledge, wants to share, and it's open, and so and it's humble. Eleonora, I can suggest you to visit our website where you can find a map regarding the local varieties cultivated, plant varieties cultivated now in Italy, because we study agrobiodiversity, so the local varieties which are still cultivated and from which are produced different kind of products at a local scale in local at the local dimension. So you can find there also some contacts with the owners of the farms and so on. So maybe it can be a starting point.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And okay, any other question, comment? No, it seems that all the curiosities are satisfied. So, Andrea, thank you very much for your time, and we'll stay in contact, and hopefully we will collaborate on this issue, very important issue. Consider that we are in the mountains, and so we are within this dimension, environmental and socio-ecological dimension. Bye-bye to everyone. Have a
Thanks
nice
a lot, and bye-bye, and keep the good vibe.
bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.